Welcome to Module 3. Congratulations, you're halfway there. Here we're going to look at your strategies. So again, in the first module, we looked at building your personal brand and the foundation and setting the intentions and the goals. In Module 2, we looked at the skills and techniques that you're going to apply in addition to that personal brand to help get to where you're going. And here we're going to look at some practical strategies that you can use to leverage your personal brand, apply the skills, and how you're going to start connecting with people. So in this module, we're going to include communication methods, the importance of connecting, not just networking, and we'll talk about the differences there, subtle but important differences. Always providing value in every situation and navigating transitions that you might be part of or that you'll face in the near future as you develop your career. So what's important here to keep in mind is we covered the techniques and skills. Now we're going to look at how to apply them. I've mentioned this before and I'll say it again. This stuff does not come naturally to many people. Very few are naturally extroverted. The people that you see who have no problem striking up conversations and are the life of the party, more often than not, it's because they've practiced to get there, either intentionally or unintentionally. But what we're going to do here is we're going to make a conscious effort to practice and build these things. It might not feel comfortable, but it's definitely going to get easier. Okay, it's going to be hard in the beginning, but once you practice like anything else, you're going to get better. So let's get going. So if you were to ask me what are the three most important things to relationship building and advancing your career, I would say communication, communication, communication. It's kind of a dickhead response, but that's what it is. So not just communication, but effective communication. So we're going to look at a couple things here: effective communication, conflict resolution, and technology. Okay, so what is effective communication? How can you communicate effectively? It's important to be clear and concise in what you're delivering. Okay, I'm guilty of this. A lot of people are. Sometimes you get into a stream of consciousness and you ramble on and you cover different points. Be clear and concise when you're talking to somebody. If you are having a conversation and you need information from the person or you need something, just be clear about it. Tell them what you need, when you need it, how you need it. People are going to appreciate it. Okay, because then they don't have to guess at things. There are verbal and nonverbal communication skills. Okay, I remember seeing a study that 80% of communication is nonverbal, which I won't go too far down a rabbit hole, but a lot of times when there's virtual meetings and phone calls, you lose context because you're not there to look the person in the eye. It can tell them a lot, their body language, if they're making eye contact, if they're looking to the side, if their arms are crossed, they're being less receptive. If they're shifting in their chair, they're uncomfortable. There's a lot of nonverbal cues you can pick up. There's some great resources mentioned in the reading recommendations at the end of the workbook. So you can check those out for some more in-depth details into verbal and nonverbal communication skills. We covered this earlier, but I want to mention it again: active listening, and we're going to add the component of feedback here. Okay, so always ask for feedback. A lot of times people are hesitant to give you things, whether it's constructive or not. They'll probably be quick to tell you when you're doing things the wrong way, but they probably won't be if you're doing it the right way. So if you're ever curious or you want to know how you're doing, just ask people. They'll give you feedback, okay? But actually take this feedback and apply it and try not to take it personally, okay? It always usually comes from a constructive perspective. So keep that in mind. Conflict resolution. I don't think you can talk about a construction course without looking at conflict resolution. And it boggles my mind why it isn't like something you learn on day one. Because what construction comes down to is solving problems on site. Usually they're not caused by you, but they become your problems, especially if you get into a supervisory or management role. So, what are some things you can keep in mind when you're resolving conflict? Number one is identify and understand the source of the conflict. Okay. A lot of times there's he said, she said, and you don't really know what the true story is. So take the time, even if it's your own person coming to you with their side of the story, take the time to understand the source of the conflict. Where is it actually coming from? Okay. Depending on the level, there's different types of contractual ways to deal with conflict. So it's important to look up your legal rights and obligations when it comes to negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. Okay. The important thing, whether you're dealing with a service clash on site between duct and conduit, or if you've got a contractual issue, it's important to maintain professionalism and respect during the conflict resolution. Okay, a lot of people, their default mechanism is flying off the handle, and I've seen grown men bumping chests on site. Um, basically, getting in a fist fight over stuff. That might have worked back in the day, but that is not a way to express professionalism and make the right impact on people. So maintain professionalism. Calmer heads always prevail. There's nothing wrong with walking away from situations if you express to the person that now is not the best time to do it. It's always best to be thinking clearly and making good decisions when you're resolving conflict. So that's an important part of communication because we deal with conflict on a daily basis. The last part here on this slide is about technology. And what do I mean by technology? So now there are many different mediums to communicate by. Okay, when I first started my career, this is going to date me a little bit, but there was still a fax machine. Okay, we had email, but people were still faxing in, requests for quotes and pricing for estimates and faxing purchase orders. So now that's, fax machines aren't around anymore. People rely on email. There's a lot of, software as a service, whether it's Procore, FieldWire. A lot of documents are managed through online platforms. What's important to, you have to be aware of the different types of technology that you're going to communicate through. But what's most important is picking the right method for the message you're trying to convey. Okay. And a lot of younger people, myself included, you're going to default to texting or sending an email. The problem with those types of communications is there's zero context, right? It's words, it's usually poor grammar, especially if it's a text message. And what I've seen and what I've been involved in numerous times in my career is you get into an email battle back and forth. And by the sixth or seventh email, each subsequent message adds somebody to the CC or BCC, and you forget what you were even fighting about in the first place. So pick up the phone and call people, especially if context is important. If it's a quick FYI, yeah, send a text message. The delivery is here, or the shop drawing was approved. Especially if you need to document things, email is important. But if it's conveying important information that's time sensitive, pick up the phone and call. Just another note on technology too. If you are, the go-to person that knows about technology and knows what's out there, knows the improvements and the benefits of it, this is going to work in your favor as well. Just even if your company isn't looking to, acquire a certain type of software or use technology, if this is another way to differentiate yourself from your peers, if you are known as the expert in that field of technology. So communication, 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 three most important things. So here's what it's all about. The construction operating system is about connecting with people. It's about developing a network. It's about being seen as an expert and knowing where to go to get the right answer. Because construction is such a vast and expansive industry, there is no possible way for you to know everything about everything, even within one certain trade. Like I've been doing mechanical for 20 years. I don't know everything that's out there, all the technologies, all the means and methods, but I know who to call to get the answers. And that's the important thing. So connecting with people is, of utmost importance when we're talking about your career. So a lot of people, when it comes to networking, think about what you see in the movies or what you might have been taught about, you go to industry events and you work the room and you hand out business cards and you shake hands and kiss babies. That's one way to do it. But I find in that sense, you're almost being too salesy. What I teach here and what's important and what's worked for me is using targeted connections with people, not just networking, but building meaningful, dynamic, two-way connections, bringing value to people, taking the value that they can provide, and having it be two-way and dynamic. Okay, so number one thing here in terms of connecting with people, we touched on it before, but I'm going to reiterate it here, is just genuine conversations. Okay, so you need to move beyond superficial exchanges because that's what people are inundated with day in, day out. Perfect example. You're walking by the site, you're walking in the morning, you bump into somebody, say, "Hey, Sarah, how are you?" And they say, "I'm good, how are you?" And you say, "Good," and you keep going. Are you really good? Was that even really an answer? Did you connect with that person at all? No. And I'm not saying to stop and gaze into their eyes and say, "Are you really okay?" Because that's going to annoy people. But take time to ask. If they say good, it's like, "Oh, what's so good about it?" Or they might be honest and say, "You know what? I'm not having the best day." And that's a perfect opportunity to jump in and, accept that vulnerability, express some empathy, and be there with them to help build the connection. An important thing to keep in mind is when you're talking to people and building relationships, yes, you are selling yourself, but it's not about you, it's about them. Okay, so focus on the other person. People love to talk about themselves, especially when you get them in that state. It might take a little bit to crack that nut, but people love telling you about their hopes and their dreams and their plans and their opinions. So get them talking about them. Insert information about yourself so they know that you're a valuable member of the team, and hit the points that they need to know on how you can solve their problems. But let them talk, ask them questions, make it about them. It's not about you. So some ways to connect here, I'll mention, and I'll go into a little more detail, but there's conferences, workshops, trade shows, the cliche water cooler, before and after meetings. So just to address each one of those. So conferences I mentioned before, they're a good way to get your face out there, but it's very hard to make a meaningful impact, especially at a trade show where somebody's going to meet, 100 people. You're only going to have a couple minutes with somebody. It's going to be loud and stimulating. You're not going to really be able to have meaningful conversations and build good relationships there, but that might be a good start to a conversation where you meet somebody, get their business card, you're able to follow up with them at a later date to maybe set up, a phone call or a coffee meeting or whatever. Okay, so that's one technique. Honestly, the best conversations I've had, the best relationships I've built around the cliche water cooler or in the lunchroom when you're waiting, to make a coffee or you're heating up your lunch or whatever. It's those multiple, frequent, informal interactions that will help to build up the relationship over time. Okay, because if you see somebody at a trade show once a year and you meet with them for coffee once, twice a year, every couple months, you're going to build a connection, but it's going to take more time. It's about frequency. So, this is easier if somebody is on the same site as you or in the same office. Less, it's a little more difficult if, you're trying to connect with a vice president that's at headquarters and you're on site. But try and have frequent interactions. Doesn't even have to be in person. You can send a text message or an email, just, saying, hi, how's it going? I had this, I wanted to get your input. Or, I remember your daughter was into skating. How is that going? Just these little things to have you pop up in their brain and help to make them form positive connections with people. Okay. So again, just to recap on those, because I covered a lot in a little period of time. Trade shows are great to get out there, show your face, collect information, but it's really in the follow up and the frequent, informal, quick little exchanges that will build up over time. Again, think about it like a bank account. Making small deposits over time is going to help to build that relationship and help you out the most. This might sound silly and obvious, but it's super impactful. Just be a positive influence and just make it fun to be around you, because especially in construction, it's a tough industry. It's hard. There's a lot of jaded people out there who are grumpy because they've been burned. If you can be a positive influence and make people laugh, they're going to want you to be around. Now, humor is a super important element of construction. Okay, some of the most successful people I've met, they're kind, they're positive, but they're really funny. So again, this is something that comes naturally to some people, not to all. I don't mean go in there and start telling knock knock jokes, but sarcasm is huge. There's some other resources that are in the workbook again that can help you in this. But be fun to be around, be positive. So one thing to take away too is we don't have a lot of control over what happens to us, but you do have control over how you react to that. Okay, so between every stimulus and response, there is time to make a choice. Okay, something really shitty could happen to you, and you could acknowledge that it's shitty and be dealing with it, but you can be positive about it. Now, you don't want to take it to the extent of toxic positivity, where you're like, oh, guys, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry. We got it. Everything's cool. The sky might be falling, but we're going to be fine. No, you have to acknowledge the shitty facts in front of your face, but always keep the end goal in mind. Stay positive and remind people of the mission. Be a positive influence and smile. It's free. It's contagious. It comes across in your voice. It helps build confidence. Just smile. This is another basic thing that you might think, well, why are we learning about this? But you'd be surprised how far you can get by just pushing the ball forward. It's like in football. You go 1 yard at a time, you get a first down, then you keep going and keep going. Just do your job. You don't have to go above and beyond. Okay, you don't have to be a superstar performer to get promoted. If anything, that sometimes can work against you because when you're really, really good at your job, the manager might not want to advance you because then they have to fill somebody. They might need two people to fill what you're doing. Okay, so it's kind of the old adage, work smarter, not harder. But do your job, make an impact. Do what you say you're going to do it on time, and make people feel good while you're doing it. And that is a killer combination. Again, you don't need to be working at 110%. You don't have to stress yourself out. You don't have to go above and beyond. Just do your job really, really well. Okay, that might sound bad, but a lot of people fail to meet the basic requirements of their job, believe it or not. So just by doing that, you're going to stand out. Quantify your achievements. Okay, people love numbers. If you're, if you're a fitter or a plumber, how many linear feet have you installed? How many elbows? How many welds have you done? How many sheets of drywall have you done if you're a drywaller? Quantify things. Use metrics to demonstrate an impact. Because if you just say, I'm a hard worker, I did a good job, what does that mean? But if you can quantify it, it sticks in people's brains and it's going to help, help your case. It's going to help them remember you. Seek feedback and constructive criticism. I think a lot of people struggle with this, uh, especially if you come out of the schooling system where you're literally given a grade after every course and you know exactly how you're doing. Once you get out into the real world, you're just kind of doing your job. And a lot of times you hear something, if you make a mistake, you get shit on, but you don't always know if you're doing the right thing or doing a good job. So just ask your manager, ask a coworker. It doesn't even have to be a supervisor. You can ask your coworker, hey, how's it going? You see anything that I might be doing that I could be doing better? I could be doing more of, I could stop doing, and just regularly ask for it and make it a regular thing. Okay. And when you do get criticism, take it constructively. Okay. Don't take it personally, especially if you ask for it. We're all professionals here. We're all grown people. It's important to, take the information and just better yourself with it. Lastly, adapt and overcome. Okay. So change is the only constant in life, and construction is no different. You come up with a plan, could be a daily plan, weekly plan, whatever. Rarely does it actually come to fruition that way. You always kind of have to be planning and adapting and replanning and reevaluating. And it can be exhausting sometimes, but you really need to be open to change and adaptable to really succeed in the industry. And things are going to change over time. Even if you set your sights on a goal and you keep working towards it, there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be distractions that come in your way that you're going to have to navigate. And it's important to have adaptability to overcome those challenges. Lastly, for this section, we're talking about getting promoted. We're talking about getting ahead. You might be going through a transition now, whether it's from a project coordinator to a project manager, or maybe you're transitioning from the field to the office or vice versa. There's going to be transitions, and people, regardless of who you are, I don't care what you say, change is uncomfortable. Okay. People gravitate to what's known, what's comfortable, and they rarely like going outside their comfort zone. But that's where the growth happens, right? Where you stretch and you push yourself. Now, that's not to say jump blindly into things, because then you're setting yourself up for failure. So what's really key in navigating transitions is understanding what you're getting into. Okay. So what added responsibilities are you going to need? If you're going from the worker level to a supervisor level, there's going to be different responsibilities from a legal perspective, from a job perspective. So understand those, and where you need training or you need information, request it from your employer or just investigate it yourself. Different skill sets are going to be required. Um, the best example I can think of here is when you're going from a worker to a supervisor. You might be getting promoted to foreman, or you might be promoted to management in the office where you're managing people. Very often, what I've seen is if you're a good technical worker, you get promoted because you know how to do the job the best with the tools. But knowing the job technically well does not make you a good leader or a good coach. Okay. It's just like if you're into sports, very often the best players make lousy coaches because it's a different skill set. It's about leading people. It's about motivating them. It's about understanding how they work together. And I'm not going to dive into the details of leadership on this course, but it is a topic I'm very passionate about. And there are some suggested readings in the workbook. The main takeaway here is, if you're striving to get to a new position or you're transitioning into a new position, don't go in blindly. Think about what skill sets you need. Ask other people around you what skill sets they think you need and work on those, whether it's training or reading or personal development there. That segues nicely into the next part about mentorship. The best way to learn is from other people's mistakes. It's the quickest and cheapest way to learn. You're going to make mistakes on your own. That comes with, just being in the industry and taking risks and gaining experience. But if you can find a mentor or multiple mentors that are going to help to guide you through certain situations, somebody you can confide in, somebody that can give you good advice, and I highlight good advice because there's a lot of bad advice out there. Seek information from experienced leaders to help make your transition easier. An important part here too about navigating transitions. Inevitably, you're going to get into a situation where you're going to have to fight for a raise or a promotion. I think everybody dreams of their boss just coming and saying, "John, you're doing a great work. We're promoting you or we're giving you a raise." Not saying it's impossible, but it's probably not going to happen. So you're probably going to have to fight a little bit for it. And the key thing here is to keep it merit based. Going back to a previous slide about quantifying your achievements, demonstrating the value you're bringing. Because if you just come in and say, "I'm doing a good job, I want more money," or "I need more money because I bought a new car or my mortgage payments went up," guess what? That's not your employer's problem to deal with. But if you demonstrate that this is what I'm doing, I'm exceeding in these areas, I've developed these skills, and you show that you're, developing yourself and you're benefiting the company with it, that's the best way to negotiate a raise or a promotion. Okay, it's not about tenure, but if it's based on your competency and your performance, you need to demonstrate, how you're benefiting the company. And also the benefit of having you in that higher level role, if you've already shown that you've taken the initiative to develop in those areas, they're going to be more likely to trust you with that and give you the responsibility that comes with that type of role. So that brings module 3 to a close. Again, here, we took what we learned in module 1 about your personal brand, and module 2 with the techniques and the skills, and we learned how to apply them to help to advance your career. We're almost there. One more module to go. Have a pause, go through the workbook, make some notes, and we'll see you in the final module, number 4.